G'day everyone, Prep Aussie here, and I hope you're all well in whatever part of the world you're watching this video. Today is Saturday, the 11th of August 2018, and the time here is 0900 Australian Eastern Standard Time. Folks, I'm not going to do a long video today because I want to highlight something that is becoming increasingly dramatic within our own environment here in Australia, and that is the farmers' plight in New South Wales and Queensland, or Queensland, New South Wales, and parts of South Australia and Victoria. Look, this is a national crisis, and people aren't politicians especially are not using that word. And because, you know, to call it a national crisis would obviously mean that it's actually very bad. You know, you hear all the rhetoric from the politicians, well, we're doing as much as we can. Well, they're friggin' not. And the fact is that this is actually, it went past being a national disaster a couple of years ago, when everyone was screaming out, look, this is really bad. This is worse than ever. We really need help. And people actually, they had truck after truck after truck going from Victoria to Queensland with hay bales on it. That was a couple of years ago, folks. Do you remember? It was on the, morning news every morning. Channel 9 set up a couple of things saying, let's help the farmers. Well, that was 2 to 3 years ago. And there hasn't been one stitch of rain since then. So look, these guys and this problem is a national crisis. And all of us need to do something about it. And we actually need to redirect our thoughts and our processes to these poor people living out on the farms. Like I said to you, I grew up in my early to late, let's say early manhood. I left when I was 21. I left Tamworth when I was 21. Never went back. And I went through the drought that we had in the 80s. And was it 70s and 80s? And like I said to you, it did not rain. Imagine this in your own mind, folks. Children were born and started going to school, and we're in, say, third grade or whatever, year 3. And they'd never seen rain. And that wasn't that long ago. That was in the 80s, late 70s and 80s, early 80s. And then when it finally did rain, they built a dam just outside of Tamworth, just the opposite side of Nundle, and it was called Chaffey Dam. And that dam was never full. It was a disaster. Everyone was calling it a disaster. And that dam went from about 5%, 10% maybe, to overflowing in one night. And that is actually a factual statistic. You can look it up and find it for yourself if you want. And then it proceeded to actually literally wipe out Tamworth and anything else below it because of the fact that there was that much rain. So they had, not only did they have to let the water go, but the water went over the spillway, if I remember, and it just poured into Tamworth. Like, literally took out big swathes of roads, and, it's just unbelievable. But, it didn't rain consecutively for all the time. The tragedy here, folks, is that I was not tragedy, I'll start from the beginning again. I was working on a property during that time as a jackaroo. And, look, it was pretty serious then. And we were only just sort of hanging on. And that was in the early 80s. People were in dire straits then. And you're talking about, I want to try and explain this to you. You've got the upper New England Highlands and the lower New England Highlands, lowlands. Tamworth's sort of at the basin of the New England region. It's down in the valley, whereas Armidale's at the top of the hill. While they've got beautiful green pastures, everything down below that level was literally a dust bowl. You know, I remember we couldn't even go to a swimming hole. There was none. Our regular swimming holes, you know, natural riverways and that, just completely dry, nothing. It got so bad that the Tamworth pool, you know, shut down a couple of days a week because they couldn't fill up the water. And, you know, look, it seems incredible, but this actually was happening. This is what you grow up with. And you actually get programmed into thinking, oh, this is the norm, when in actual fact it's nowhere near the norm. And you know, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. That needs to be addressed. This is a national Australian crisis. That's how bad this is. You've got people topping themselves out there every day at the moment because they just can't go through with it anymore. And while, you know, other parts of Australia are sitting there and, you know, literally throwing water over themselves because they're so bloody wasteful, that other parts of the country are actually like, there is no water. I'm going to show you I showed you a clip, an ABC News article yesterday, which actually really peed me off. You know, things like that, things like this government, they're not actually standing up, as we all know, for the everyday Australian person. And the everyday Australian person is a sort of character that will, and I mean this, every average Australian person. He just gets head down, bum up, we'll be right, mate, or she'll be right, mate, until it gets to the point where it's not right, mate. And then when it gets to that point, I suppose we all expect the people that we pay our taxes to, the government, to step in and, you know, do the right thing and help us out. Well, as I said to you, we're sending, you know, billions, and I mean billions, overseas to tin pot shitholes that we don't really give a shit about. I can tell you right now, I don't care about them, and I care more about what's happening in my own country to my own Australians than to someone in the Solomon Islands who, I don't know, wants to build a funeral pyre on the beach. You know, this matters to me more than that, and it should matter to all Australians more than that. So I showed you the article yesterday, and I didn't go down far enough, because what irritates me, and I'm hoping you guys share this with everybody as well, what irritates me the most is that the politicians are still trying to justify that the money we're giving away, which we just give away to NGOs and, you know, government dictators and, you know, Indonesia, we give money to Indonesia. For Christ's sake. They're actually digging their heels in now and saying, oh, you know, we have to give that money to them. You know, it's like, fuck off. No, you don't. You have to give that money to us. When we need it, we want it back. And by the way, stop giving our money away. So I'm going to read the article to you now, and it's particularly about a particular woman called Julie Bishop, who is actually really starting to piss me off because she is turning into a little despot of her own. Have you ever noticed that Julie Bishop digs her heels in all the time? Like, there's not one thing that woman has done for the everyday average Australian. Show me one thing that she's done for the average Australian. She's a Clinton-esque type grovelling dirtbag that I tell you what, I'd love to see her losing the election. I really would. Because people like her have to go. And we have to start getting people in there that care about Australians. She doesn't give a shit about Australians. Not one iota. And I'm going to read this to you now. If you remember, this was the article that I showed you yesterday. But it's from the ABC. You can find it in there if you go there. I'm not going to put the link in there. Just have a look at some of these pictures, folks. You can't believe that this is actually happening. This is how bad it is. You know, there's just nothing there anymore, folks. It's all gone. You know, it's the worst drought in living memory. And I've been through a few of them, a couple of them. One was bad, one was really bad. I'm going to start from here because this is where, for me, the Australian government message really gets bent and twisted to, you know, don't you understand? We have to give it to other countries. And this here says it, fair income, mate. I'm interested to know how many countries have offered aid for our drought-stricken farmers. And the answer is sweet F all. And this is from Josh Frydenberg. He said, simplistic messages often fail to take into account the benefits that foreign aid brought to farmers in Australia. Well, it's not doing any benefit to them now, you dipshit. We put 300 million into foreign aid in Indonesia, but the reality is we're making 3 billion worth of trade in agricultural products to Indonesia. Mr. Littleproud said, well, I'm sorry, but if you don't fix the problem, you will not have a farming community to make $3 billion worth of trade. Oh, Jesus. Can you understand why we hate politicians? It's because of stupid rhetoric and shit like that. Freudenberg, you won't have a friggin' farming community if you just let them die. You won't have $3 billion worth of investment, you moronic idiot. God, jeez, it pisses me off. We do not want to cut our nose off to spite our face. Oh, honestly, I can't understand why reporters not stand there don't say to him, mate, are you for real? This is really going to piss you guys off. We do not want to cut our nose off to spite our face. We need to be calm and decisive about this. The reality is, this is keeping farmers alive. Foreign aid made up 0.8% of the total federal budget. Well, I don't care. Give that 0.8% to our own farmers, you idiot. Foreign Minister Julie Bishop, who is this little dirtbag under here, defended the amount of money Australia puts toward helping its neighbours. And here we go again. I don't want to hear about helping our neighbours. I want to hear about helping our Australians. Here, today, now, we have to help our Australians, fellow Australians. They're dying. Their farms are ruined. I don't want to hear about, it's 0.8% that we're giving to foreign aid. I don't give a shit. Give it to our farmers. That's $8 billion. Give it to our farmers. It's $8 billion. Give it to our farmers, you dickheads. God, Jesus. Just listen to this rhetoric, will you guys? All developed countries provide foreign aid as part of an effort to foster international peace, security, and to develop the economies of some of the poorest nations on earth. Mrs. Bishop said, don't give a shit. Give the money to our farmers. We help strengthen security in the region, aiming to ensure Australia is not affected by instability, conflict, or terrorism. Really? Fair income. These people actually believe this shit, by the way. We help strengthen the health systems of our nations in the region. And that is really important at the moment, isn't it? When your farmers are dying on their farms. Listen to this. This really annoyed me. So they are better able to respond to pandemics. The last pandemic, folk, was after the last pandemic in the world, technically, was after the First World War. So, you know, this is why they think we're idiots. And other diseases before they reach Australia. Mrs. Bishop said it wasn't a matter of having to choose between money for aid or money for farmers. And look, as I said, you just can't. These people are now, they've actually crossed over the line of actually being rational for Australians. They're actually working against Australians, these politicians. There is nothing wrong, and Fair Income Aussie said it the best. I want to know how much money those foreign aid countries are now giving to Australian farmers that are in drought relief. Let's turn that around. Let's turn this whole thing around and say to Julie Bishop and Josh Frydenberg and to Malcolm Turnbull, get on your computers and actually start a Twitter storm and that about this. How much money are the actual countries we're giving foreign aid to now helping to rescue our farmers? How much money are they giving us? Because I can bet you it is a big, fat zero. And we really need to make a Twitter storm, a YouTube storm about this now. So please share, like, share and subscribe, whatever it is they say. Share this message with everyone because this bullshit has to stop. It has to stop now because these guys are actually, while I'm sitting here talking to you, someone's actually shot themselves. Shot and killed themselves. That's how bad this is now. So, Josh, shove your 0.8% where the sun don't shine, buddy. All right, folks, I'm not going to do the verse of the day. I'm just going to do the Lord's Prayer. And the reason I'm going to do just the Lord's Prayer is because I want everybody to concentrate on this, just on this, and say this prayer together so that, you know, we offer some spiritual help and we ask for some spiritual help for these farmers because they're going through hell, guys. They really are. The Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Like I said, folks, let's try and get this activated so people around Australia start saying what I'm saying. I want to see, 20, 30 more people on YouTube saying exactly what I'm saying and start building this up so that they stop sending our money overseas to people who aren't giving us any help at all anyway. Because if this keeps going, we're not going to have a farming community. It's going to be a barren wasteland that will, the Chinese will just buy up all the farms anyway. So please get this message out there. God bless. Prep out.